I was raised in the church. I departed for many years, but even when I came back to the faith, one of the things I had a hard time understanding, and I would like for you to kind of give in your perspective, many times it is portrayed that if somebody is humble and living a simple life, that they are looked upon middle class to lower class. Usually upper class is looked upon as and the story of the Bible that we hear, which will be my next question, is can a rich man make it to heaven?
So let's take the first one.
Yeah.
Humility or poverty does not equate to greater godliness. It doesn't. And this is my personal experience. I have met incredibly humble, wealthy people. This is just my experience. I have met people that if you and I sat in their living rooms, we'd be like gawking at their, at the surroundings. Like I've sat in those living rooms and I'm like, wow, incredibly humble and incredibly generous. And I have been sitting with very, very impoverished people and perceive the spirit of arrogance and pride. So I don't believe that money changes people. I'm sure you may have heard this. I believe that money amplifies who you already are.
Enhances who you are.
Right. So then I have seen arrogance and pride manifested ironically in people with practically nothing. And you would think, bro, you have nothing and you're arrogant and prideful. So it's actually a matter of the heart.
Imagine if they had millions with that type of attitude. They would
we've
only
seen those people.
Exactly.
Society has slandered wealth because it's almost like they've tried to tar this wealth concept with filthy rich, right? We use these terms. It's a
negative term.
Yeah, just to get it. Look, the story of the Hispanic in America is succeed, but not too much, because then you're gonna make me look bad. It's like that bucket of crabs. How do you keep a crab in a bucket? You put 2 crabs in there.
That is so true. But it's funny you mentioned, because I sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, since you mentioned, especially in our culture, we naturally look and we say things in a negative way.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden I see you with a nice car, my thing would be something like this and say, hey man, it's a nice car, man. I'm glad things are going for you. It'd be like, must be nice to have money, right? But even that is like,
passive aggressive little dig. Yeah. So I'm coming back from a mission trip with my church from Kenya, Africa, and I fly through Amsterdam. And one of the passengers on the plane from Amsterdam back to Houston, Texas, where I was living at the time, ends up being one of the F-16 fighter pilots for the Danish Navy.
Wow.
And I'm like, super cool, man, what's up? What are you doing? And he goes, man, I love America. And I go, really? Why? He goes, Walmart. I love Walmart. And I started laughing. And I'm like, Walmart? Why would you like Walmart? There's so many things in Walmart. But here's what he said. He goes, the other thing I like about America is nobody's jealous of you. And I thought, really? I said, wow. I had never, ever understood the impact of different political ideologies as clearly as when that guy talked to me. He goes, where I'm from, and this is his words, not mine, if you have a red car, people hate on you for having a red, let's say Corvette. And he may have said Corvette, I'm misremembering this. He goes, and I said, well, okay, so explain. He goes, and the reason why they're upset that you have the red Corvette isn't because they can't go get one. It's because the thought is, you shouldn't have that unless all of us can have it.
Wow.
And I was like, you're right. America is not like that. Mind you, this is 20 years ago.
Yeah. I was going to say.
Things are starting to change.
Yes.
And I said, you're right, because when I see a nice car in America, I go, dude, that is so awesome. What do I need to do to get one? It's not the thought process of, oh, I can't believe that guy has that. I mean, people can take that route. But the capitalist structure, the opportunity that exists in America exists in very few places, if anywhere else on the planet, to achieve that. So that concept of, hey, you can have it, but only if all of us can have it, it de-incentivizes the effort necessary to achieve X, Y, or Z. And the Bible does say, if someone doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. That's a very dramatic passage in the Bible. Yeah. It's like, and if you go to the Old Testament, people of Israel, go get the manna, and it's going to evaporate with the sun when it comes out.
Like you have to get up early.
That's right. In other words, you got to get after it. Nowhere
so you're telling me God was Hispanic, because that's how my mom was. Sunday morning, like, why are you sleeping in, right?
I think we're the children of immigrants, so
I think
we share that in common. I think of that.
It's funny you mentioned. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to mention the following. Many times you'll hear people say things like, well, Jesus was a socialist. all over the New Testament. You could tell he was a socialist. What is your response to that?
Yeah, I don't think we're reading the same Bible. It would be a mischaracterization to try to put Jesus into any specific political affiliation.
I'm glad what you said. If you don't eat,
Well,
if you don't work,
if you don't work, don't eat. And the natural order of things is that there's that causal effect relationship. And then in the New Testament in Acts, it talks about the Apostle Paul saying, hey, listen, if you are a widow of a certain age, then you should be put on the rolls to be able to receive, I guess the charitable portions of food. But if you're young, you're not, hey, I'm a young, widow. You don't get to be on that roll because you're expected to. You have still work left in you. So back to the Jesus question, I think it would be ineffective for us to say, oh, Jesus is this or Jesus is that, because I would reference the story of the Old Testament when they're about to take over Jericho, and Joshua is like on his own, kind of having a moment, and then he sees this warrior, and Joshua does not realize he's in the presence of the angel of the Lord. And he says, whose side are you on? Are you on our side or their side? And the angel's like, I'm on my side. I didn't come to join a side. This is mine. So every single thing that we have created in this world to categorize ideologies and
left, right,
all of that stuff is subordinate to Christ. And Revelation chapter 1 verse 5 says that Jesus is the king over the rulers of the earth. So every single, Xi Jinping, Biden, Putin, all of these people, according to the Bible, as a biblical Christian, all of those political systems are subordinate to Jesus Christ. So he's the sovereign over all of it. So, but at the same time, I am partial because of my background, because of just my Hispanic heritage, Cuban American background. I do not empathize with communism. I do not empathize with socialism. I don't, because I've seen the harms that does. Not to say capitalism is better, and clearly capitalism has its drawbacks. But I think it was Winston Churchill to say, capitalism is the worst economic system ever, except for every other one. So I think he said that. I gotta go.
And it's funny you mention is, and just to clarify, obviously this country, the United States of America, is not a perfect country. However, it's debatable that it's still one of the best countries to be in.
Unquestionably.
Hence the amount of people who come to this country for what we call the American dream. And I think recently you might have heard this too. You don't hear things like I'm not going to offend the one out there, but the other country dream. You only heard the American dream, right? Well, so it's something to definitely keep in mind. What are some things that you would tell to people of faith? And once again, I'm not narrowing it just to Christians, even though I'm one. But when I would sit down, I would hear a sermon. I would hear how all these things that I must do to get ready for heaven. I'm nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. But I had very little tools on how to prepare myself on this earth until heaven came. Okay. What are some tools? What are some things for someone out there that says, hey, Pastor, I know the world is only getting worse. I think we all agree with that. Yeah. I know Christ is coming one day soon. But what do I do in the meantime? Should I just go full-time missionary? What if I feel calling to start a business? How do I decide that? What is some advice that you would give to the young people, for someone out there that says, I want to start a business, but should I as a Christian?
Somebody mentioned this to me some time ago, and it stuck with me, that Jesus essentially called a bunch of entrepreneurs to follow him. Like, if you think about it, Jesus was an entrepreneur because he was a carpenter. So essentially he owned his own business. And he worked in his own business. As you asked me to come and share with your viewing audience here, I thought about what are some of the connections with the gospel? How could that impact somebody's real life today to live it out in a faithful way? How can they do that? I believe the gospel, and for people that may not know what that is, like somebody's watching this and it's like, what is that? That's such a churchy word. The gospel is the good news, right? That Jesus is coming again, and that God created a perfect world. Our first parents, Adam and Eve, chose poorly, right? And it created an incredible separation between us and God. That free will choice separated us from God. But God, in his incredible love, sent his own son, that through the cross, that sacrifice, he could bridge that divide. That's the good news. In a nutshell, if I could tell you the good news, that's what Christians talk about. Hey, we have good news, which is this world's a mess. How do we get from this world back to a perfect world? It's only through Jesus Christ. That's the conviction of a Christian. That good news, I believe, has a lot to offer people that are business people. Why? The gospel is abundant and free to everybody. The mentality of an entrepreneur has to be an abundance mentality. You cannot be successful and have a mentality of scarcity. Scarcity is, what's the budget? Let's divide up the pie to make sure everybody gets a fair share. The entrepreneur says, forget the pie. I need to learn how to make more pies. Unlimited amounts of pies. I need to make so many pies that I can just, have no problem. That abundance is in the gospel because the good news of Jesus applies to everybody. Nobody is hindered or like held back from receiving that. And so I think that that's one of the most powerful principles of being a Christ follower in the abundance mentality. We see it in nature. How do we see it in nature? We see it in let's say, an apple. One apple contains multiple seeds that you can plant multiple trees from to have unlimited amounts of fruit.
Of one apple.
From one apple.
Wow.
So even in creation, those of us who believe that God created this, God has created an unlimited supply. And Ephesians chapter 3 is one of my favorite passages. God is able to do abundantly, exceedingly more than all we can ask or ever imagine. How many ideas have changed the world? How many ideas have been born in the heart of an entrepreneur that has faced a problem? That's one of the greatest places to find wealth, is to find a problem and solve it. Solve a problem. Is something upsetting you? Solve that problem. That is one of the things that the gospel says, hey, we haven't tapped out on the resources, on the ideas, on, just devices or whatever ways of, interacting with each other. And another thing that, let's say a young person right now is considering, what's my life for? Our life has to be about serving others. And that is the key to being successful in business. Adding value to people's lives, genuinely, authentically, with integrity,
and
with
people
honesty.
See it.
And people will line up at your door.
We'll see it.
So that you can serve them. And by serving them, one of my financial mentors says that your bank account reflects how many people you're serving right now.
Wow.
Your financial resources is a reflection of that. You want to have more, serve more people.
Wow.
And that's what I feel is part of the gospel. So whatever God has called you to do, whether it's as an entrepreneur, an employee in a business, whatever God has called you to do, our goal is to help those young people say,
yes.
What would Jesus look like if he was an attorney? That's you. What would Jesus look like and live like if he was a plumber? That's you.
A car salesman.
Exactly.
A home builder.
A home builder. So the embodiment of all the beautiful principles of God, of love, mercy, generosity, sacrificial giving, and living, that's part of what I see young people can be inspired today to say, I'm not going to take the easy route. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to give more in service than whatever I'm taking in payment. And I'm going to have unlimited amounts of opportunities. If you try to achieve without having integrity, what you end up with is Bernie Madoff. So what is Bernie Madoff? Bernie Madoff is the Ponzi scheme guy that, ended up in prison, defrauded all these people, the most vulnerable in society, and ended up, dying in prison, or I don't know. I think he died in prison. His family.
I'm not sure what
several people committed suicide in his family.
But I was going to say many people died due to the situation. Yeah.
That's what quote unquote success looks like without ethics, and it is embedded in the seeds of a lot of secular teachings right now, which Daniel Lapin, others of us who have faith would say that's detrimental to society. The world needs ethical business people. The world needs it. We are starving for people of integrity. Success is one of those things that God can bless people with, because one of the questions you asked before is, can rich people get into heaven? Listen, poverty does not equal spirituality, and people will throw out the phrase, hey, money doesn't buy happiness. Okay, but neither does poverty. So poverty never bought anybody happiness. But how about we find our happiness in our identity in Christ, that I'm a child of God. There's nothing I can do for him to love me any more or love me any less. And because of that certainty, I can live a life of generosity, kindness in the world, sacrificial giving, spread out the love of God, the love of Jesus in our life.
Wow.